Good evening, everyone. My name is Dave Hatton. I'm a financial consultant with First Midwest Financial Network, a division of First Midwest Bank in Gurnee, Illinois. Thank you for joining us for the College Planning Essentials webinar. Tonight, we're going to talk about some of the different whys and hows of getting your children and your grandchildren ready for college from a financial standpoint. If we were to play the Sesame Street game, one of these things does not belong, this would be it. You'll notice different fonts and colors and everything else on here. But this is the compliance slide that we have to show at the beginning of every web. First Midwest Financial Network is not affiliated with JP Morgan. We do have an agreement with LPL Financial to offer some securities. One of them is JP Morgan, but there's no real affiliation there other than contractual. The products we talk about are not FDIC insured, not deposits of the bank, not guaranteed by the bank, and subject to investment risk. That said, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start talking about the college whys and then the hows. The first couple of sections here, we're going to talk about college matters. Why does college matter? Why do you want your children and your loved ones to go to college? A little bit on the costs. So those are the whys of saving, and then looking at how do you end up paying for it? It's an exorbitant amount sometimes. And so how do you end up paying for that? And then finally, with the appendix, that is after the official webinar. I'm going to throw out some additional information with that, let you mull over those slides. I would recommend that you do some pauses during that section. There's some good information there. I'm not going to cover it in a lot of depth. And in fact, as we look at this, the whys are pretty much the same for everyone. From a broad context, everybody has their own whys. They want to be the first one in their family. They want to make a difference in the world, whatever it happens to be. There's a reason why they want to go to school. Those whys are particular to them, but from a broader standpoint, the whys are pretty much all the same, and we'll touch on those briefly, and we'll dig a bit deeper into the financial aid and then finally savings, how you can help save for school, some of the different tools that you have, and why you should do that. So let's dig in here into the whys. I think it's no big surprise to anyone that a high school graduate might earn $39,000 a year, whereas a college graduate could make about $28,000 more. And if you look at professional degrees, almost 2.5 times that, so almost $100,000 a year. When you types of differences, that's those really add up over a lifetime, and they can mean as much as a couple $1 million difference for over their lifetime in total earnings capacity. So college degrees do matter in that regard. It's not just the amount of income that you make, but also the stability of that income. You look here, and it's very prevalent today, and it was also the same during the Great Recession back in 2008, 2009. You saw a huge spike in unemployment amongst the high school educated individuals, whereas those with college education did not suffer nearly as much. Looking at it pre-COVID, unemployment rate amongst high school educated individuals was around 5%, whereas college education would bear about a 2% unemployment rate. So there is something to be said about having college education and the stability of your job. It's not just want your job, whether or not you have the education, it's what the education is in. Computer science majors will make more than engineers, will make more than statisticians, or those in healthcare, and they all make more than teachers, which for better or worse, that is how it is. A cross section of all college education will net you about $51,000 a year in starting income, and which is about a 30% increase over and above a college or a high school education. Why do you need to save? Well, we're just going to take a little bit of a pivot here on the why. Why save? Because it is the fastest growing segment of our economy in terms of inflationary pressures. Um, Tuition has increased 800% over the last 37 years, uh, double that of medical or healthcare, housing, anything else. There's a number of reasons for that. It's grown at an average of increase of about 6.5%. Number of reasons for that. One, there, as you'll see in one of the later slides in the appendix, the number of college applicants has nearly doubled over the last 15 years. And the acceptance rate has decreased by about 6%. So there is increasing competition for those young bodies to attend the top schools, and marketing costs money. Another reason is that a number of the states, I'm in Illinois right now, a state hit very hard, not just by COVID, but by financial pressures that have been wreaking havoc through this state for a number of years, decades, and that has caused some of the colleges to lose some of their funding and financial support from the states. The last reason that that this has occurred is an increase in the faculty and staff. I read an article a couple of years ago. The number of students over time, over the last several decades, has increased by about 5%, 5 to 10%, and the number of faculty has increased almost 50%. That you're having more people, or fewer people rather, you're having fewer people support a broader employment base. And in that, and if you know anything about business and payroll is the largest segment of a budget for any organization. And as such, that by putting more people on the payroll, you're increasing the cost dramatically for the students. One of the ways you can get around that, I'm sorry, that going forward, that doesn't look like it will slow down at all. An average cost for a 4-year public school today for an 18-year-old will be about $94,000. For private tuition, a little over $200,000. If you have a newborn child or grandchild, you can expect to pay $225,000 plus for public school, and over $500,000 for a private institution. And one way to get around some of that is to use community colleges. And we have a fine school here in Lake County, the College of Lake County. I have a client who has a son, and he told him that when you get your degree, it doesn't say where you started your education. It just says where you finished it. You get a degree from University of Illinois or DePaul or Northwestern. It does not say that you did the first 2 years at College of Lake County. So in mind, it's a great way to go out and get some of your general education courses. Granted that you also have the opportunity to do some of that through advanced placement tests throughout high school. But as you get towards the high school, the end of high school, and you're going to into college, if you want to cut some of that out and maybe take some classes at your local community college, that's another way to do that. The cost is dramatically less per credit hour, and you don't have to pay the outrageous room and board. And quite frankly, if you look at the pricing for some of these for the freshman year, the room and board is one of the highest costs itemized out. So there's a number that's the using the community college is a great way to alleviate some of that cost. And as we start moving towards financial aid, a lot of folks believe that this is going to be the panacea and the pill that will help them swallow some of the college costs, putting it in loans, what have you. As we talked about already, the cost of college has gone up over the last several decades, whereas the financial aid has actually dropped almost the same amount. So there's about a 25% change, drop in the amount of, in real time, in real dollars, about a 25% drop in the amount of college aid that financial aid that's offered to our students. And just as a reality check, when you look at how much is actually offered per student, only about 25 to 30% of the financial aid is offered per student, leaving anywhere between 75 and 70 and 75% of the rest of the cost to be picked up by the parents. Oftentimes I hear parents talk about scholarships. Oops. One other piece on this, only about 0.3% of the students out there will actually receive a full ride. Number of folks will pick up some scholarships, but to get a full ride is pretty rare. When you look at the athletic scholarships, it's equally as so. And in fact, only about 2% of high school athletes end up getting scholarships of any sort. One of the things with the 529 plan is if your child or your grandchild receives any sort of financial aid or a scholarship, actually, if they receive any sort of scholarship, then that will allow them to take a withdrawal for an equal amount from that 529 for a non-educational expense. You would have to pay the tax on that amount, but it would alleviate you of paying the 10% penalty. We're going to talk more about the taxation of 529 plans here in just a moment, but just know that scholarships can be beneficial in that regard as you're looking at planning and what to do if they do get a full ride, or some scholarships and not all of the 529 is needed. So how do they calculate financial aid? I won't say it's an easy calculation. It's a fairly simple calculation when you look at it from the big picture, but looking at this total college costs each year subtracted by the expected family contribution is about how much you should expect in your financial aid eligibility. And then that's roughly how much you would get in grants and loans. More than likely, based upon income, it will more than likely be loan opportunities, not grants. So what is rolled into this expected family contribution? There are a few different things that are added in. First of all, the income and assets of the parents. When we talk about the assets, as you notice on here, it's non-retirement assets. So you can exclude your 401k, you can exclude your IRAs, your Roth IRAs. If you have a profit sharing plan through work, those can all be excluded. Your income cannot be. For the students, their income is included. Anything above, as you can see here, above the protected amount of $6,660. That's on the 1920 tax year. That is indexed for inflation. But looking at that, there's a number of things that go into the income, and we're going to talk about that here. I'm going to add a comment on that here in just a moment, but also your assets. So what's included in the income? That is unearned income from an UPMA account, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more in just a moment. It also is inclusive of any income that comes from a distribution from a 529 plan owned by the grandparents or aunts or uncles or friends of the family. That money is included in that as well. So we're going to talk briefly about a strategy here that you need to be aware of when you're planning for the use of the 529 plans from other individuals other than the parents, and some ways you might be able to get around that. This is a busy slide, and I want to focus on just one column and one row as we go through this. So let's focus first on the column $200,000, and we're going to look at two different income levels here, starting off with a $100,000 income. If you have $100,000 in income and $200,000 in non-retirement, your expected family contribution is right about $20,000. If we double your income to $200,000, keeping the same $200,000 in assets, you'll notice that your expected family contribution more than doubles. We're going to take that using a row now, and let's take a look at the $150,000 with $100,000 in assets. Your expected family contribution is $37,000. If you double the amount of savings that you have in non-retirement savings, your expected family contribution only goes up $6,000. The income is the most important factor when you're estimating the family contribution for your expected financial aid. So when you start looking at your FAFSA, that is the area that you want to focus on most. Obviously, you don't want to do anything that would be unethical or that would pull your integrity into question. But if there's any way to keep that at a lower rate, lower amount, that would be beneficial. The effects of savings on financial aid, and we're going to just drive this home one more time, taking two families, the Smiths and the Wilsons. The Smiths have $200,000 saved. The Wilsons have not saved anything. Both of them have $150,000 in income. Both of them are going to pay for $50,000 a year in education. When you look at the Smiths with $200,000 saved, their potential financial aid is about $7,000. Whereas the Wilsons, who have saved nothing, they're only going to receive an additional $11,000, so right around $18,000 in potential financial aid. Again, the primary factor when they're looking at the income, or for looking at figuring your expected family contribution, is the income. Mentioned earlier about the grandparents and others who might be contributing to a 529. When you complete your FAFSA, they're going to be looking at your income from 2 years before. So if the school year is the 21-22 school year, you're going to fill that application out by the deadline is actually already passed, October 1st of 2020. They're going to look at your 2019 income. If you had anything in there during that time frame, then they're going to consider that. If once you start school, say for example your sophomore year, if you had any income that was coming in from an external source, or even in your freshman year, if your grandparents contributed to your freshman year and that income came in, then just know that is going to count towards your family contribution, and it will lower your potential financial aid. My recommendation is twofold. One, if you're going to, if your grandparents or other loved ones are going to make contributions to your education, they should do so in your final years of school. The other way that they can do that without affecting it any more than it already has is to make those contributions. If they're going to make a contribution to 529, have them contribute to your parents' 529. So a couple things to consider as you're going through the FAFSA process. Finally, student loan. This has been a major issue for some time. Student loan debt is now the leading consumer debt in the nation, at more than $1.5 trillion. I think it's one of the biggest social factors out there today. it's lending itself to a number of different issues. One of my biggest concerns is not so much those students who made it through the 4 years, who now have the ability to go on and possibly get a higher paying job. My concern lies with those students who made it through 1 or 2 semesters, racked up a significant amount of debt, and then dropped out. And they're not going to have the jobs that they would have had if they completed their degree. So now they're really behind the 8 ball, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on them going forward. And we can see how student loan debt has affected millennials. And as the Gen Zs come in to play on this as well, you can see through the slide here with the bar chart, the difference between millennials with and without student loan debt, and knowing that their net worth and the retirement savings for those without debt is dramatically more than those with student loan debt. Now getting into the crux of the presentation, and we're going to dig into this a bit deeper. The Coverdell Education Savings Account on the right. I've been doing this for 21 years. I've opened 2 of those accounts. So we're not really going to focus on those very much. We're going to put our emphasis here on the 529 plan for the most part, and secondarily, the UTMA account. The UTMA was the first of the so-called college accounts. It's a custodial account. It's opened up in the name of the Social Security of the minor, and whereas it does have some tax benefits, it is not a 100% tax-free investment program. Whereas looking at the 529 plan, as long as it's used for education, you don't have to pay any taxes. The money that you invest is after tax dollars, and that money will grow tax-free as long as it's used for qualified education expenses. What are those expenses? And that's one of the questions I receive more than any other. I actually was asked this just the other day. Can I use that for paying for ACT prep? The family has a senior going to be a senior in high school, and they want to get him prepared for the ACT to try and get him a better ranking. And evidently it's a fairly pricey procedure or a class, and they want to know if the 529 plan can be used for that. And the answer is no. You can use it for tuition. You can use it for room and board. And that includes if the students live off campus. You can get a comparable plan for room and board that they would pay rent. And so you can use the 529 plan for that. For books and fees, if a new computer is required for school, then you can use it for that purpose. You cannot use it to travel to and from school. I had the daughter of one of my clients went to University of Arkansas. That was a question that they had, is can you use it to travel to and from Arkansas? No, you cannot. But if you have any questions on that, I would recommend, just reaching out to me, and be happy to respond to any of those questions. One benefit of the 529 plan is the control. The account owner, the person who opens and funds the account, for the most part, will be in control of the account. If they decide that they want to use it for that particular beneficiary, they can. If that beneficiary, that student, doesn't go to school, they can give that money out to other family members. If it's a grandparent and they decide they want to go back to school for another degree after they're retired, have at it. You can use it for that purpose as well. You can name yourself on the beneficiary later on if you want it, again, as long as you're using it for post-secondary education. One of the biggest drawbacks of the UTMA account is the lack of control after the age of majority. Ostensibly, the UTMA account, or the Uniform Transfer to Minors Act, in some states that is the UGMA, the Uniform Grant to Minors Act. The UTMA account will allow the custodian to control the account while the individual is a minor. Once they reach the age of majority, in some states it's 18, most states it's age 21, that money becomes the students, and they can do anything they want to. So they've gone through 3.5 years of school, they have one semester left, there's still $40,000 left in the account. They can use that money to buy a little red Mustang as opposed to going to finishing up school. The money is theirs, they can do what they want. The other thing that you can do with the UPMA account is it can be used for anything for the benefit of the child, whereas the 529 is specifically an educational account. The UPMA can be used for anything for the benefit of the child. Again, ostensibly, if mom and dad have lost their jobs, they're custodian for the account. It's in the best interest of the child to put food on the table, put a roof over their head. There are no UPMA police that are going to go back and check on that, but I would just recommend that you dot your I's, cross your T's if you do happen to use that money for something other than education. But it has to be used for something for the benefit of the child. And again, that could be helping them enroll in a college or high school soccer team to buy the uniforms and help travel and that sort of thing. So again, anything for the benefit of the child. I'm not going to go into the contribution limits and all that sort of thing in this forum, but if you have any questions on that, feel free to let me know. One of the things that I would just mention is that when you're saving for college, you need to save as an investor, not so much as a saver. And this is going to be driven home again in a moment. But most people who are saving for college, they do so in savings and checkings accounts and CDs. And if you know anything about what's going on with your checking and savings accounts right now, they're earning 0.01%. Oftentimes, a 1-year CD might earn you 0.1 or 0.2%, whereas the 529 plans, they may fluctuate with the market, but they do have the ability to have a greater earnings than what you would find with a typical savings or checking account. And given the fact that that your inflationary rate is, again, 6.3%, for college, you need to keep pace with inflation as best you can. And the earlier you start, the better off. If your goal was to pay for 50% of your child's college, you could do so by just putting back $300 a month. If they're a 15-year-old and you haven't started yet, you're going to have a little bit of catch up to do. You're going to have to put back about $1,400 a month, and that can be obviously that can be sticker shock for a lot of people. But the fact of the matter is that the longer you wait, the more you'll have to put back on a regular basis. So when you look at that over the life of the student, you'll also notice that in real dollars, that's actually a lesser amount that they put back. And this is just a time value of money, looking at how monthly contributions over 6, 12, and 18 years, the amount of money that you put back versus the amount of money that you save. Use time on your side when it comes to investing for your goals, your college goals. And one question I get is, so would it be better for me to just take a loan out to do this, down the road? The answer to that is a resounding no. And I would recommend, to pause here for a moment, if you'd like, and read some of the information on the bottom in the footnote here. But this is essentially showing $118,000 education. Two ways to pay for it. One is you save for 18 years, putting $300 a month, initial investment of $1,000 and $300 a month for 18 years. With, I believe it's 6% growth, that's going to net you as about $66,000 of actual investment, but it's going to bring you out to $117,000, almost $118,000 in principal and growth over that time frame to pay for that college education. On the flip side of that, if you decided that you were just going to go and you were going to borrow that $118,000, once you start factoring in principal and interest payments, especially the interest payments over a period of time, you're going to end up paying $164,000 for that $117,000 education. So essentially what you've done there is you've gotten a mortgage for your kids before they ever buy a house. Tax Advantage 529 plan has potential to grow more quickly than a taxable investment earning the exact same amount. So we want to take a look at the tax efficiency and not just the growth rate itself. So with a 529 plan, as we mentioned, it's a tax-free growth. The income that you put in there, the principal that you invest is after tax dollars. No two ways around that. That you do have the possibility of getting a state income tax write-off, but nothing on the federal level. But looking at this, we're just going to talk about the federal level taxation. With the tax-free 529 plan, if you have a 6% rate of return, it is truly 6%, as long as you're using it for the qualified educational expenses. If you're in a 22 or a 24% tax bracket, after taxes are paid, your tax equivalent yield is right around 4.5 to 4.7%. So know that the tax monster is going to come up and get you, and it's going to take away a good portion of your earnings over time. So the tax-free amount is actually going to be beneficial. If you look here at the illustration that they have, and again, look at the footnotes and get a little bit better understanding on this, you can save about $50,000 more in a tax-free account than you would in a taxable account over an 18-year period. So again, that you're talking about a pretty good chunk of change. That's a couple of semesters. That's a full year in college. Finally, and this is where I'm going to disagree with the presentation. One of the factors that they say here is don't invest or don't pay for college with retirement dollars. And this is something that I will tell you that I disagree with. Not 100% of the time. I do think the 529 plans are a great way to save and invest for college. However, if you're only going to make a contribution of $100 a month and you're not putting anything else back for retirement, my recommendation to you is going to be put that money into a Roth IRA. Put that money into a Roth IRA that will grow tax-free, just like the 529 plan. Put that money into a Roth IRA that you can use for education purposes. You can pull money out of a Roth IRA after 5 years for death, disability, first-time home buy, medical expenses, and for college education. So you can pull it out for a number of different factors, but that college education, you can pull it out with no taxes, no penalty, as long as you're using it for educational purposes. Same as with the 529. The difference is if you don't send your son or daughter to school, then you can use that money for your own retirement. If you're not maxing out the Roth IRA anyway, and you're not going to put back the full amount, I would recommend just doing the Roth. Simplify your life. That way, if they don't go to college, you have the ability to use that again for retirement down the road. One of the other pieces with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was they allowed the 529 plans to be used for K through 12 education as well. This slide just does nothing more than show you the obvious. If you take that money out to pay for K through 12 education, know that it's not going to be there for the post-secondary education. The offsetting piece to that obviously is that if they go to a better prep school, private school for high school, they might have a better opportunity for scholarships down the road. And then finally, went the wrong way. Performance pays. The more risk you take, the ostensibly the more benefit you can get. That pays out most of the time. The line that's missing from this, I think, is the 1% line that would show you what you're doing if you're putting that money into a bank account, into a savings or checking, and that would be about even. So know that I would not recommend that anyone invest outside of their risk tolerance. But if you have the ability to take additional risk, know that you could. Most of the 529 plans out there have age-based portfolios that will become more and more conservative over time. And as you get closer and closer to that college date, then it's going to preserve more and more dollars. So great way to save for school and get that additional return over and above the college, or over and above the savings accounts. And then finally, I would also recommend again that you just stay invested. Know that over the last 37 years, looking at rolling 18-year periods, stocks have returned anywhere between 5.5% and 14.5%. Average, the median is about 10.5%. Bonds are about, again, using the median, about 8%. And a 50-50 portfolio is going to net you right around 9.5%, whereas cash over that same time frame, using the 18-year rolling returns, about 3.9% is the median. I can tell you that number is dropping, and it's dropping quickly, with the interest rates being near zero at this point in time. And that is the end of our presentation. If you have any questions regarding 529 plans or UPMA accounts, I would just hold out. Feel free to call me at 847-739-3871, or you can also email me at david.hatton, Hatton, at firstmidwest.com. And first is spelled out. I'm going to touch on the appendix slides here real quick. I made mention of this earlier. Again, the applications have nearly doubled over the last 15 years, and the admission rates have dropped. Some other criteria on here as far as what's going on with acceptance and where your student needs to be. This is a great slide for just some websites. I would mention savingforcollege.com is a great website, started about 20 years ago with the first 529s, started by a gentleman by the name of Jeff Hurley. He was a CPA from New York, and that I've watched this website grow over the last couple of decades. It does a phenomenal job of comparing 529 plans and how they've performed. The different and a number of different tools on there as well for financial planning. Also different places where you can go for grants and scholarships. My daughter, when she was a student at U of I, working on her engineering degree, had two part-time jobs. One, she waited tables at a number of different places down around Champaign and Urbana. Her other part-time job was looking for scholarships and grants. That is something that your students need to know, that they need to be looking at all the time. Applying for a scholarship is not easy. They're looking off a lot of times for papers to be written and different things. So just know that there's a lot of different places out there that they can go to help and find different scholarships and grants that they may be qualified for. Other ways that you can fund your 529, we mentioned the Roth IRA a moment ago. Other ways, if you have cash value life insurance, that's another way. Home equity loans, and other taxable accounts that you may have, and private loans as well. The college, some different tax breaks that are available to you within both the state and local levels and federal levels. You have the tax advantage 529 plans. One thing I mentioned, and the next slide is going to touch on this a little bit more, but some of the states will actually offer state income tax write-offs for 529 plans. But again, those are, you get the tax-free growth on that, the American Opportunity and Tax Credit, and then the Lifetime Learning Credit. Talk to your tax professional about those if you qualify. And then finally, student loan interest deduction and state tax deductions. Finally, there are a number of states that provides tax parity. Tax parity means that they will offer state income tax write-off regardless of what 529 plan is used. The tax neutral states are the dark blues. They do not provide any tax benefit from the state income tax side. But know that half of those states they don't have state income tax anyway. Alaska, South Dakota, Wyoming, Texas, Tennessee, Florida, none of those states have state income tax. Looking at Nevada as well. But looking at a state like California, where obviously a lot of students there, they have huge tax bills across the state. It's a high tax state income tax state, and but they're not going to give you any tax breaks for a 529 plan. States like Illinois, we will offer a state income tax deduction for Illinois state plans. There are 3 state plans. The first was Bright Start, and another is Bright Directions. If you are in the state of Illinois and you ask me about a 529 plan, for compliance purposes, I have to provide that or offer that at least, and do a comparison between that and other state plans, just because of the state income tax deduction. Both of those are private plans. They have nothing to do with the state budget or anything along those lines. I know that's a question that a lot of people have, given the fiscal irresponsibility of our state. The last is one that's called College Illinois. College Illinois is a prepaid tuition plan. I don't know that I've ever recommended that, but I've had a couple of parents who have gone out and purchased that in previous years. So just a quick piece on that. Again, if you have any questions on the different states and the state plans, feel free to ask. You can call me again at 847-739-3871 or email me at david.hatton@firstmidwest.com. Thank you very much for your time. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.